What's up, fighters? All right, we're jumping into our German volume training. This is the video bonus audio kind of commentary in addition to the podcast. Um, so let's kind of dive into it. First, we're warming up, and by we I mean me, obviously. If you guys like, by the way, I'm wearing this shirt for a reason, not just to be a little egotistical. Because I don't know if you guys will notice, the shirt that I'm wearing is a picture of me from a fight, but I just like it as a visual. So you can find out more awesome clothing at lofclothing.com. I'll link to it below in the description. But I just think I like the actual image of it. I'm going to try and see if I can find maybe a kind of outline or variation of it that I thought could be cool. And I also think it's a metaphor for, since Life of a Fighter, our taglines, what's your fight? It's a picture of me getting my hands raised. So it's me winning the fight. And that's, again, a metaphor representation of goals. When you set goals for yourself, being able to actually accomplish them. And you're not always going to win every single fight, but being able to set yourself up for success with those wins. So it's my little 2 cents. All right, so here I'm warming up, and I like using my shadow boxing as a warm up. Body temperature, traditional reasons for warm ups, but I also find that it's enjoyable, so it makes me want to get warmed up and get through the movements and still does all the general things I want from a warm up and get that done. But I also find that it helps mobilize the joints here. Again, I'm not throwing super hard here. You guys are going to notice I'm kind of lightly flowing through things, getting circulation, stimulating the lymphatic system, making all those things work. And then there's also a little side boost where I'm training my skill. So I'm getting those neural pathways firing, and I'm working them as well. And I think what's interesting about neural pathways is you can condition them just like muscles, right? Not just for physical performance, there's other applications too. And what I think is interesting is if you think of like a chess player, for example, they're burning a tremendous amount of calories and they're not moving. And the reason they're doing that is because our brain requires a tremendous amount of energy. So I think on average, it depends on what you read and what you look at, your brain can burn about 30% of your body's total caloric needs for the day, depending on, again, activity. So that's a big part of it, and that's why I like using skill-specific things where appropriate. Again, I don't want to build imbalances and overwork those muscles, so we're going to find a balance here. But even here, this is part of my warm, getting my hips mobilized, getting ankle mobility, queuing up my calves, and you guys are also going to see I got egg weights in my hands just to add a little bit of weight. Shout out to egg weights. They're awesome. I highly recommend them and check them out. And part of this bonus commentary is also, I'm going to nitpick myself here. So the part of this drill is to, again, get those hips firing, get those neural pathways building with getting on the ball of your foot, pivoting on the ball of my foot, getting my heel off the ground, turning the hip. And you'll notice I'm trying to look straight ahead. And even there, I kind of look at the camera a bit, bad habit. This is something I point out to even all the students and clients I work with. Is trying to keep yourself looking, especially if you're trying to fight or you want a live application. Never take your eyes off your opponent. That's like huge. That I think we sometimes take for granted. This is, Phil talked about this in the last Thriving Thursday on Road Combat Club's Instagram. You can check that out. And this is something I talk about a lot. Is like when you are training, be mentally dialed in. Not just okay, I'm gonna crush this workout, but pay attention to every second of your training for that whatever given time, whether it's 20 minutes, an hour, 45 minutes, hour and a half, whatever you're doing, you got to be turned on mentally, because if you're not paying attention, that's where you'll let mistakes happen, and that's where you'll really start to let bad habits accumulate. So I think being like, especially when we come in back into the gym, I tell everyone when you're on the mats, you're dialed in. If you're not dialed in, you're either going to pay because I'm going to catch you and I'm going to embarrass you, whether physically or emotionally, or you're just going to have to get off the mats and we're going to call it a day. You can't be there. So again, another warm up, not just for blood flow, but also getting those teeps in. I like to get those reps. Teeps are one of my favorite striking techniques in general for a range controller, for a lankier guy like me. Jab or my straight punches and my teeps are one of my favorite ways to control range. So that's something that you're going to kind of see here. And again, I like it as part of the warm up and building into specifically what we're working on today with German volume training, and specifically looking around the core and the postural chain. I think this is a nice complement to that, because this is relying a lot of the anterior portion of the body in front of the hips, the quads. So it finds a nice balance of, when working postural chain, get a little bit of that anterior chain firing up as well. And vice versa. When there's workouts where you're working on the anterior chain, let's say pushing movements, things like that, I think it's important to work on your postural chain as a balance as well. Whether that means, punt like right here. This is, yes, it's still technically an anterior chain movement, But punch outs I like to think of as a postural chain cue for me, because I really utilize my rear delts, my rhomboids, my lats, all those muscles in my back to actually retract my hands and get my body back into position. So here, little thumbs up, getting my hydration on. We're about to go into the dynamic stretching. And for this dynamic stretching, you guys are going to notice sometimes I'll pop in front of the screen because this is also it was a recorded Zoom session. If you guys want to actually join our Zoom sessions, you can click on the link below for all of April. I'm making these Saturday Zoom sessions free access for everybody. And then we're going to add more to our fitness vault for our members as well. So if you guys want details on that, check out the description below. And yeah, we're going to go into dynamic stretching now. So did about 5 minutes to warm up, took a minute, getting hydrated, setting my timer, having a little bit of coffee because this was in the morning. And then we're going to go through dynamic stretching to match all the muscles and movements that are going to be in this workout. There's going to be slight variations pending the workout. I have like kind of like a gold standard warm up. I use almost every single warm up for any activity, and then I'll add in a few movements pending on the specifics of that exercise and of that theme of the day. But there's certain basic general movements that I think are important to have almost every session. Like here, toe touches or Frankensteins, depending on how you want to refer to them. And the idea is, again, 30 seconds of movement. That's why it's dynamic stretching. And that's just my personal belief. I'm not saying that you can't do static stretching. I think there's a time and a place for it, especially pending on what you're working on. Whether it's jiu-jitsu, there's a time and a place. Whether it's explosive plyometrics or jumping movements, you may want to like turn off your hamstrings or inhibit them. And there's a time and a place for everything. So here, going to our hip flexor. And then also you'll notice I try and give a couple different angles for all the movements, even going into the strength portion of it. I try and show you guys both an anterior and lateral side, sometimes postural positioning as well, so you can get a better grasp on the movement. And here you'll notice not just flat-footed, but then also if you feel comfortable with it, you can go into that heel raise to add a little bit more ankle stability and activation of the muscles in the lower body. And that's something I'll do for pretty much all the movements. And I like single limb or unilateral movements because most of the time, especially in athletics or performance or anything related in the world, you're never going to be in perfect squared up 2 feet on the ground position. You're probably going to be leaning on one leg or utilizing different variations of your body. So I think it's important to set yourself up for success with that. So here, going to piriformis stretch, 2 variations. I wanted to show both, whether it's grabbing the shin, cupping the knee, pulling it up, or putting the leg over our knee and sending those hips back. I think both have their place. I like incorporating both. And then also here we're going into a single leg deadlift variation, hip hinge, more for, again, activation and also just balance and stability of the ankles. You'd be surprised how much you can struggle with this. Even here, you'll see me like I hit the wall. My foot hits into the wall. I didn't have the right spacing. And then I show first with my hands hinging, reaching down to the ground. And then I'll also show with the scapula and postural chain activation. I think that's even more, not just, I don't want to say important, but valuable because of that scapula activation and all the muscles around there. And then here, getting a little bit more upper body, a little bit more range of motion, and then we'll actually end up jumping into the workout. So that was just kind of my little breakdown. What I also wanted to talk about before we go into the workout, and I'll actually kind of loop into the regular podcast audio while we're going into the training session. So you guys are going to notice in a little bit, it'll actually just go right into the straight up audio podcast as a overlay while you can visually see the workout. I wanted to give you guys the rests and all the different times in between because I figured if you're doing this workout at home, you got the times and everything set for you. So you can go according to my rests. I do 60-second rests during the German volume training with the 2 exercises, then boom, take a 60-second rest. And what you'll see is I use, again, shadow boxing. I like it as an active recovery. I'm not going super hard. And I also like it, again, just for my goal specifically is to simultaneously have not just the strength challenge and the stimulus there, but also from a metabolic boost and burning a little bit more calories, keeping my heart rate up a little bit, and ultimately going to have a positive impact for the goals that I have. And here just added in some banded movements to get, again, that postural chain fired up, rear delts, rhomboids, external rotators, all that good stuff. And notice here, again, I'm not shrugging my shoulders up, shoulders down and back while doing this movement. Same thing here with the pull-aparts is shoulders down and back, not just letting them shrug up. as well. And I'm almost going at a downward angle to really activate lats a bit more, rear delts, rhomboids in the scapular region. So all that good stuff to say, I'm going to jump into the workout as well as on prayer hands here. Again, I like that for just more mobility, thoracic spine, for my wrists, as well as the shoulders. And it just feels good across the board. So we're going to jump into the podcast overlaying with the workouts, but notice in between shadow boxing, I specifically work on a couple different themes, and I kind of try and point to my hips or point to my feet when I'm working on something specific. Look at what's going on with my footwork in those shadow boxing rounds, guys, especially in the later rounds. I tried to work on a couple different footwork variations, as well as just some beneficial basic drills you can work in on your own. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the podcast audio lay while we're getting into the workout. I hope you guys enjoy.
Yeah, fighters, what's up, y'all? Jumping into another podcast, but before we do, just like every podcast, this one is brought to you by the Life of a Fighter shop. You can go to lifeofafighter.com/shop and check out all the awesome products, services that we have. As always, I'm going to talk about our two most popular programs, our Fitness Vault and our Pro Coach program. And right now, for April, all the way up until May 1st of 2020, you can use promo code coronavirus, and any membership, any program will be free. Even the ebooks, anything that's on the shop, you can get it free at checkout. I just wanted to kind of give you guys that as a resource. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you guys want to check out, we also have the video podcast that's going to be up on YouTube. I'll link to it below. And you'll notice in that video, I'm wearing a Life of a Fighter custom shirt. It's actually me after one of my fights. It's a little narcissistic to wear a picture of yourself on a shirt, but I just like it as for just my hands being raised with the American flag in the background. It's a cool image. And I just like the idea of, part of what I believe is what I do with Life of a Fighter is helping people win their fight. So to me, it's kind of like a metaphor for, when you show up and you put the work in, you will win your fight. And that's kind of what it kind of symbolizes to me with those hands being raised, because not everyone fights in the ring or the cage. So thought you guys would enjoy that. You can go to LOFclothing.com to check that out and all the other designs we have. We got hoodies, t-shirts, tank tops, long sleeves, baseball tees. We're going to get hats up there eventually, sweatpants, shorts, all that fun stuff. You can even get phone holders or phone cases, coffee mugs, all that fun stuff. Babies, we got to get some for Lena and Tessa. All right, well, I'll have the links below as well. Let's jump on into it. And as you heard me kind of mention before, that there's also now going to be a video version of all the podcasts, whether it's the workouts that we're doing, like today was our recording of our 10 a.m. German volume training with a focus on eccentrics and body weight exercises. So that video is going to be up on YouTube, as well as I'll link to it below. And then as a bonus, for all of our Fitness Vault members, Pro Coach members, and anyone that's listening, if you guys want to get it, check out the link below. I'll put up a template of a little more details on what German volume training can look like in a program, not just limited to the exercises that I used in the video from our workouts today, because I only did 2 exercises, believe it or not. And there's so many more options that we have. You can actually add auxiliary movements after those 2 key movements in German volume training. We'll go into the details. But if you want a nice template, if you want exercise list, again, you can click on the link below. If you're not a Fitness Vault or Pro Coach member, you won't have access to it directly. So it'll just ask you to put your email in, and then I'll email you and follow up, and I can help you get set up with that. But you can also just use the promo code coronavirus if you're listening to this before May 2020, and you'll just get access to it for free. So, All right, that's a little bonus. Got that out of the way. Let's talk about what is German volume training. What the hell am I talking about? Or you might see it as GVT as the acronym. Love acronyms. And the idea here, and I really like it for especially at-home training, is because it helps stimulate those muscles to put you in a hypertrophy state, or to kind of cause that hypertrophy for your muscles. So when we think about the different breakdowns of training, there's different focal points, whether it's like we talked about last week, HIIT training, which is more of the metabolic conditioning side of things, as well as neurological conditioning and speed and performance. And they're all variables of performance, right? It doesn't always have to be fast. There could be, strength performance, right? And that's kind of what we're working on this week. So with that, the idea is you can also do this with weight. And this is something I actually started getting exposed to at Acceleration Sports Training in Deer Park, Long Island, New York. Shout out to the team over at Acceleration, John Furia. He's been my strength coach since day one, since I was 15 years old. To this point, he's the man, and the whole team over there, Steve, Rob, all the guys, and everyone that I've met there have been amazing. They work with the literally highest level elite athletes. You're looking at, they have Chris Weidman now, Matt Fervola, also UFC fighter. And they've worked with, all the professional athletes in all the sports, hockey, football, baseball, you name it, they've worked with it. Also all the way down to like preteens and everything in between. So I'm a huge fan of them. They're kind of like my mentors and where I've learned a lot of things that I have. So I always like to shout them out when I can. But the idea is, so I'm saying all that because I learned German volume training with actual weights in the gym. So that doesn't mean you only have to use body weighted conditioning for it. However, the caveat to that is because of the volume, hence German volume training in it, you have to adjust your weights. So the idea here is you're doing 10 sets of 10 reps. That's like the kind of gold standard. And you can vary that and tweak it, but really it should be 1 to 2 primary movements that you can do in either a superset with no rest or a 1 minute rest in between. I tried, and if you watch the video, and if you guys are watching now, you'll see that I did it with no rest in between the movements and a 1 minute rest at the end. So, and I'll go into the details on why that minute rest and when to change that. But the idea of 10 sets, 10 reps is to, again, overload the muscles, to create a stimulus that challenges them so that you get that hypertrophy, so you get that muscular breakdown. So then as they regrow and repair, strength will go up as well as mass and size. Now, when I say mass and size, I say that very carefully because I feel like a lot of listeners, especially our female listeners, will get scared off by that. And it doesn't mean that you're going to get bulky and huge. It just means that you're going to help build and repair muscle tissue in the areas that you're focusing on with your primary lifts. And so I'll give you an example. So what we focused on is, since we're at home right now with everything going on, I did body weighted and I actually brought in some resistance bands to show you progressions you can use and also regressions you can use if you have access to resistance bands at home. And it did 2 movements. So a plank and a bridge. Now there's a lot of variations here to those movements. I showed the standard movement I was doing as well as a regression and a progression for both. And I'll talk about those. And then we'll talk about, again, other options and things you can do with volume training. So for a plank, what I wanted to focus on is not just get your traditional plank movement in. I wanted to also focus on the scapula as well as the lats. So when I talk about scapula, it's those shoulder blades, the bones in your back. So when you're shrugging your shoulders up and down, the bones that are moving are your scapula. And there's a lot of muscles around there, and you can really target quite a bit of those when you add in a couple different movements. And what I did here is I worked in either, you could do this without a resistance band. I use one in a majority of the sets here just to give you that. I like it as a tactile cue and also a visual cue for you guys, but also it adds another layer of resistance, as well as being able to engage the rhomboids, all the muscles around the scapula, and the lat. So there's 2 kind of primary movements we're working on here with this plank. We're trying to pull our hands apart while also simultaneously pulling our elbows to our body. Now, because we're in this low plank, your arms are on the ground. You don't have a lot of movement here, and that's the point. You're not supposed to move. It's really cool. Again, it's an isometric movement here. So I show the actual kind of cue before in the video. I show you just kind of what my hands are doing in my mind, how to activate the muscles in the scapula, and also how I want your elbows to move as if there wasn't the ground in the way, what you should be kind of visualizing in your head. So if you guys have a hard time thinking about it, click on the link below. If you're listening to the podcast, either on the website, you'll just see it here, or on, iTunes, whatever you're listening to on Stitcher, click the link below. I'll have a link over to the post. I'll have the video as well as YouTube. So you can use that as a cue. You can use resistance band or not. Ideally, you're pulling your hands apart and pulling your elbows down. That's going to help, again, activate all those muscles in the postural chain, scapular region, lats, and then as well, you're going to try and hold it for up to 5 seconds. And then I also, in this, wanted to focus on eccentrics. I didn't do it as much with this movement, but what you can do is as you're pulling your apart and you get into that end motion of the movement, elbows tucked, pulling your hands apart, you can then slowly release for up to 5 seconds. That's a great part to the eccentric movement, is the lowering phase. Now, since there's no technical lowering with this plank, it's the relaxation of the muscles. And especially if you're using a band, it can be really helpful. And again, adding this eccentric portion, especially for body weight when you don't have the same stimulus that you may have in the gym, the eccentric part can again aid in that hypertrophy and aid in that muscular breakdown and challenge, not just for the muscles, but also neurologically. Now, what I will say is when you hear neurologic stimulation or those neural pathways, things like that, it can be a bit overwhelming. And even as something I have to continuously challenge myself on to learn about, there's different speeds at which these things fire, right? So the faster the movement, it's going to not just recruit muscles in a different way, but it potentially can recruit more, but it's also going to have an impact in later on how you perform. So speed is going to ultimately let you be fast later down the road. When you go slow in these eccentrics, it's going to kind of potentially, I don't want to say slow you down. It's not going to negatively impact you if you have the proper balance of other training. However, if you're only doing this, you're going to get a greater boost in your strength and muscle, but you do potentially run into the problem or the barrier of not training speed and potentially getting a bit slower. So keep that in mind to balance out. And I think that's where, even like with Phil DeRue's been on the past podcast and talking about his condensed conjugate method, where max effort and dynamic effort, finding that balance between, I'll say strength and speed for lack of a better time and explanation to go into it. It's not just that, but that's kind of one way I think there's an interesting balance. So all that being said, slow, lower for any movement that you're going to use, and then make sure that you're getting those 10 reps in with good control. Because if you have your body weight, you may need a little bit more of a challenge, and the eccentric can really help with that. So you can go, I like 3 to 5 seconds as a gold standard. You can go all the way up to 10 seconds if you're finding that you're not getting the same stimulus, but I leave up to you. Then superset that, no break in between, with a hip bridge. And I had, again, a couple of variations here, but you know what? I'm realizing, let's dive back for a second. For the plank, before I go into the hip bridge, I talked about the kind of gold standard move. Let's talk about progression, regression, and then we'll go into the hip bridge. So to progress this movement a bit, you can add a leg raise or a donkey kick variation to the plank. And you'll see me do this in the video version for a set, just so you guys can get an idea. I think it's like the 3rd to 5th set, somewhere in there. I use my glutes and kick my leg up just for a second and then come back down and then do the opposite leg. And I'm trying to time it while I'm actually pulling the band apart and pulling my elbows. I'm also raising my leg. Now, this is a great challenge on the core, and it's also, again, firing up that postural chain. This was the workout today was a focus on the postural chain. That's the back of the body. So lats, rhomboid, scapula, glutes, hamstrings, calves, all that good stuff. Now, you can vary this and superset it in different ways and combine different exercises, but this was just a great way, I thought, to challenge the postural chain. And because yesterday I worked, Johnny Buck of Rogue Combat Club and Rogue Combat Online had a great squat and push-up workout, so I wanted to balance that out with a postural chain. And that doesn't mean you can't do other things. You can combine it different ways. So that was just what I picked. Now that's the progression, getting a leg up, holding, and then again, you can utilize that eccentric lower for your leg, just like you would with letting out the slack for your upper body. Now, if you want to make that a little bit easier, let's say it's challenging, you can go down to your knees and do the plank and the pull apart. And you can even add in that glute fire if you want to get the glutes going, but you just don't feel strong enough in your core to do that. So that's just the regression and progression to it. Now let's talk about the hip bridge. And then again, I'll go into the rest periods. And I actually, if you watch the video, I'm staying with an active rest period where I'm actually moving and shadow boxing a bit. We'll talk about that in a second. So the hip bridge, again, body weighted, feet are about hip width apart. I'm trying to keep my knees and my feet and my hips in one line. So I'm not getting my knees too much wider than my hips or pulling them out or externally rotating or abducting them, anything like that. And we can talk about that, or cues you can use if you have some imbalances with your abductors or adductors or things like that. We can talk about that. But here, hip bridge, hips come up, trying to get them as high as I can. And I'm really squeezing my glutes, those butt muscles, and then hold for a second and come down 3 to 5 seconds. So that's kind of the basic standard version. Now let's talk about the progression. Progression is you can grab a resistance band, put that over your hips and drive them up, same thing. And then if you want to level that up another step, you can use, and again, I show this in the video, once you get to the top position, kick one leg out, have good control, come back down, and then repeat that process for the opposite side. You can do that where one rep is kick your right leg out, come back down, left leg out, back down, that's one. Or you can do hips up, right leg out, leg down, hips down, that's one. And then go to the left side, hips up, leg kicks out, and that's two. You have those choices there, and you can dictate your reps accordingly. So I showed both options. Again, the key to this is don't rush into it because you have to have good control of your hips. If you start noticing your hips are swaying left and right, especially as that leg kicks out, not the progression yet. You got to get those hips and got to get that core and get the glutes firing up properly and strong enough to maintain it. Now let's talk about a regression. Let's say you can't, like, Mike, I can't even get my hips to the top end of the motion. No problem. I got you. You got two options here. So you can grab that resistance band. Either if you have an object or a place to hang it on the ceiling, great, anchor it to the ceiling and put it under your hips, and it'll help lift you up and make it easier to get off the ground and then give you a little bit of assistance at the top, but you'll still be challenged. Or you can just, I didn't have something to anchor it to in the video, so I just held it in my hands, holding it above my hips, and gave that little assistance up. Either way is a great option to help still develop, but feel it out. You should be challenged by this, especially in the last 2 reps, should be challenged. And then once you start getting to those 7, 8, 9, 10 sets, again, you should be feeling this. This is trying to, I'm going to use the word burnout for lack of a better term. I get a little skeptic or a little sensitive with that word. You should be kind of really challenging your body here and be smoked quite a bit. Because again, we're trying to not just neurologically overload, we're trying to overload with the stimulus here from the muscle side. So that's the 2 movements that I picked. You'll also see in the video, we warmed up and we stretched. I did a 5-minute warm up, 5 minute of dynamic stretching, jumped into the workout. And then we did a 5-minute cool down of shadow boxing and a 5-minute static stretch, hitting the muscles specifically worked. But I also like to keep in mind that you don't have to do shadow boxing. Anything that gets your heart rate up. I like shadow boxing because it's a skill specific thing that I think is good for mobility, and I like it just in general to do, and I try and pick things I enjoy doing. But you could do jump rope, squats, walking, running, bicycle, whatever you want. You can find something that works for you. If you're a jiu-jitsu guy, find something maybe like solo drills that you can work on, things like that, or just general movements to get warm. And then in between, you'll notice in my rest periods, 1 minute rest. We want to try and cap it at 1 minute when we're talking about not just muscular development, but also for it, there's a positive impact on testosterone. When you keep your rest periods from 30 seconds to a minute, research has shown that it's going to have a positive impact on your testosterone levels and the stimulus for that. Now, if you want pure strength and you don't give a shit about, your testosterone or your weight or anything like that, you can go 2-3 minutes even. And especially if you're using weights like bench, squats, and heavy weights, deadlifts, things like that, that's perfectly fine. You can increase your rest period, but be mindful that your metabolism and your testosterone aren't going to be as impacted as it would otherwise. So I think that's just a fun caveat to include in there. And that's kind of what I wanted to work on, guys. I really recommend checking out the video because I'm going to go into a way longer explanation. I have the whole workout up there, and I'm going to do a longer commentary on that. We'll dive into the nitty-gritty and the details, as well as take advantage of the workout template and the exercise list that I'm going to upload because we only did 2 exercises, but there's a tremendous amount of variability to this. And really, technically, I'll be honest with you guys, I like to do more than just 2 primary movements. So doing 2 primary movements, I did because of time reasons and showing you the efficiency of it. You can get a total body workout with 2 movements, but I usually like to add, anywhere from 2 to 4 additional auxiliary movements to the 2 primary movements. So you really round out your workout and get a total body workout depending on the equipment that you have and the time that you have and all those variations. But because of time and just options here, that's what I wanted to showcase for you guys. So that's pretty much it. Again, I hope you guys enjoy. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know. Reach out. I'm here to help. And yeah, appreciate you guys. I hope to see you guys. We're going to do Zoom sessions all month, Saturday at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So if you guys want to jump in, they're there. Peace, y'all.
Oh yeah, I'm back. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast portion. A little bit more bonus content here for you, at least my commentary. Like I was saying in the beginning of the video, um, again, using footwork and using different positioning. Notice here for my hips, I don't always just do the same thing as far as when I'm moving backwards. Sometimes I'll step back with my right foot first. Sometimes I'll step back with my left foot first. And I think the important thing that I'm trying to show here is that I'm using my hips either way. So regardless of what's happening, however I'm moving, I'm trying to, bingo, there you go. So I step back and I'm using my hips with a punch. That's how we're going to optimize and get the most out of our punch, not just throwing at our arms, but utilizing our hips to match our footwork. And even you'll notice, or hopefully you noticed, throughout the workout when I was utilizing shadow boxing in between those rounds, um, yeah, just staying moving and having a theme. And I think sometimes in the moment it can set you up for failure. Where you're like, oh, I just kind of feel like working on this. There's a time and a place for that, but I think it's important to have a plan ahead of time. That's why I created this, so you guys have a plan. You can click on the link below too if you want access to the actual workout template and the body list or the body weight exercise list that you can mix and match different exercises for this. But have a plan. Don't just go in guessing. I planned this out. Even in between all the rounds, I planned out some of the things that I wanted to work on for footwork, for positioning, for my hips, for my checks, for my kicks, for my answers. It's all some themes that I really like and that I think are staples that everyone should include in their workout. So here again, hip thrusters using the band, and you guys saw the different progression and regression I liked for this. But I just think this is a great movement across the board, and I hope you guys are enjoying it while going through it. And if you're struggling with it, again, use that regression. Don't let your pride get in the way. And if it's too easy, again, add that progression. And if that progression still isn't hard enough, there's even more progressions I didn't even cover that you can kind of either reach out to me for, and my team will help you with that, or you can just kind of even look for it. There's some great options out there. And again, here for this round of shadow boxing, working on that inside kick. I like this inside kick because I think it slows someone down that's a heavy pressure fighter. Sometimes the downside to being a lankier fighter is that people will pressure you coming in, right? So being able to slow them down with an inside kick or an outside chop kick is a great option. And what I'm also working on here is the Olay, I like to call it, kick. I got this from Coach Tony Flores, who he actually pulled it from some Dutch-styled kickboxing rounds. And notice how I shook my head and I said, yeah, to look at the difference on footwork and hips. So I'm turning my hip over, I'm really laying into it, and I'm making them miss. So if I can get a read that they're trying to hit my inside leg, I'm going to time it, boop, step back. And even here I show southpaw. Yeah, Deuce, I see you watching, so I want to make sure that southpaw is out there. Got it. So again, we want to make them miss and then make them pay. And there's nothing worse, I think, psychologically than when someone thinks they got an easy shot on you or they got your timing down and they're going to lace into your leg, and then all of a sudden they missed, and now they're eating it on their leg. It's a huge momentum shift for me. So again, those pull aparts, I really like this one. I mean, I was actually really sore. So today's Monday. I shot this on Saturday. I'm actually still feeling it in my rhomboids a bit because this is one I haven't done in a while. I wanted to bring out for you guys. So again, in the rest periods in between, as I mentioned in the podcast, we can play with for different times based on your goals, but try and keep minimal in between the two primary movements and then 30 to 60 seconds at the end. And then we'll dive in a few more reps. We'll get into the next round of shadow boxing and some of the themes. But if you guys have questions even on some of the things that I was working on, I'll link to also, I have doing Muay Thai with Mike, another YouTube channel and series that I put out that I think you guys will enjoy. Or you could just reach out to me for questions. I'll always love talking about this stuff, which is why I wanted to add in this commentary for these videos. And yeah, so got my timer set, got some water. Boom, we're going to go into the next round of shadow boxing. And again, you don't have to do this. This is something I like from, active recovery. And here, it's, again, you could take the time to rest if you need it. You don't have to do it this way. So this is actually the cool down at the end of the workout. And notice here I'm showing two different hook ranges, the long range and the short range, because, I think a lot of times people ask for, is hook a short range or long range? It could be both. It's just how do you throw it, and then adding in some fun elbows. And that was, I think, my favorite part of Thailand is being able to use elbows and really getting more comfortable with them. And here working in some checks to be able to, I think a check is kind of one of the most important things in Muay Thai that separates it from everything else, because a strong check really changes how the system gets scored. If you know how to check, you're going to not get scored on you as easily. And then if you can answer back, it's really demoralizing. Again, notice though, because this is the cool down, I'm not going 100 miles an hour. I'm slowing it down here. And I think it's important to be able to check and answer back. So I try and work that in a bit throughout this. And just being able to flow, guys. Like, I think the biggest thing, it's an art. It's an art form. This is an expression of your body. And sometimes I see everybody gets stiff and they're thinking about it too much. And I have that problem myself still, paralysis by analysis. But when I really am feeling at my best, I'm flowing and just feeling it and not thinking about the footwork and the movement too much and not getting too stiff. So be able to, again, let Bruce Lee expression, flow like water, or be like water. It just kind of flows. So let it kind of flow. And here, again, kind of showcasing pressure, 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 covering, and then boom, inside kick to slow them down. Someone's pressuring you, they're pressure fighting, and you're trying to cover, and then you get yourself moving backwards. You can just stop them with that inside kick. Or here, a nice little switch knee, but I think that idea is important. Being able to, I don't want you constantly moving backwards, but if you find yourself getting on your horse and having to move a bit or getting caught backwards, being able to have an option to slow them down so they can't just get off a tremendous amount. You got to have that plan B, because your plan A is not always going to be there, right? Especially once you start getting hit. We got to drill into your brain, into your body. Like, I don't even have to think about it anymore. Like, when I get hit with combos, like, it's a default, I'm going to inside kick. Whether that actually lands and hurts them or not, it interrupts their flow, and it's going to have to make them adjust. So then it gives me an opportunity to either recover and move or to open up and answer back. Either way, I think it's a win. So here working a little bit more head movement. Look, head movement compared to my hips. When I move my head doesn't go outside of my hips. So when I'm moving forward, look, my head never goes outside my feet and my hips. It's got to stay within them. Otherwise, you're going to be off balance. You're going to be in trouble. Whether I'm using my hands and my arms to help move the punches, or I'm using straight up head movement, here like rolling under, moving in, whatever have you, I got to keep my head within my hips and within my feet. Now notice when I slip to the left, I move my left foot forward. When I slip to the right, I move my right foot forward. Then when I roll under to my left foot forward. And when I roll under to my right foot forward. And I'm using my hips as well, so that if I can have the opportunity to open up, I can still throw punches. I'm still in good position to fire, because we don't want to be caught in a position where you're like, all right, cool, I didn't get hit, but I can't put any offense together because my feet and my hips aren't underneath me. You always got to have your hips and your feet in position to be offensive, because sometimes they're going to have a window and you got to be able to take advantage of it. So even forward pressuring, not even throwing punches, being able to move forward. Let's say they're hurt, they may still throw some punches moving backwards. So we got to be prepared for pressuring, moving our head, not being an easy target coming straight in, and being able to be elusive while also dangerous. And here, just changing some angles, pivoting left, pivoting right. I know a lot of times people struggle pivoting right. So I don't even think of it as straight up as a pivot. I think of it more of as a step. And here I'm just kind of trying to find a little bit of a flow, some position, now working some knees and trying to find those angles. So you're never just staying in that same position for too long. A still target is an easy target. If you're a moving target, it's significantly harder to get hit. So I always try and keep that in mind for myself and, well, for everyone I work with. Be a moving target. Also, it takes more energy to do that. So you can't all of a sudden in training be a still target and then in a fight or competition be like, oh, I'm just going to move a shit ton. Hey, guess what? You're going to run out of gas real quick, because A, you haven't physiologically trained for it, and B, you haven't neurologically trained for it. I guess neurologically still physical. So you just haven't conditioned your body and your brain to be able to work at that pace. And you have to be able to set yourself up for success to do that. However you train in the gym is how you're going to perform. So you want to be able, and I like the other expression, you're going to show your worst. I forget exactly how that expression goes. But basically, you want your worst level to be able to show up for fight and still be able to perform. So when you're at your worst, you still want to be that level at your worst has to still be better than your opponent's best. Right? That's what you're kind of, in my mind, that's what I'm shooting for. I'm trying to be whatever my worst is, I want it to be better than everyone's best. So when I have my shittiest day, I can still show up and perform and showcase. Here again, going through our cool down, static stretching. This is not exactly static. However, the breathing of it is to help transition from our sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight mode, to parasympathetic system, rest and digest mode. If you finish your workout and you're not doing this, you're really hurting yourself, because this cool down is everything to optimizing not just recovery, but your body's digestion, your absorption of nutrients, and how the rest of your day is going to look, whether that's in the morning like this workout was, or at the end of the day. Especially at the end of the day, if you're trying to get to sleep afterwards. Like, I know I had a huge problem when training. I would train all the way till 10 o'clock at night. I wouldn't properly cool down. And even if I would end up listening to music that would pump me up. And then I'd get amped back up all the way again. And I'd have a hard time going to sleep. And then even the food you're eating, when you're in that sympathetic fight or flight mode, your body's not utilizing the nutrients. You're not digesting it as efficiently. You're basically just, it's getting in, it's getting it out as quickly as possible. And you're not really able to break down, digest, and absorb and uptake those nutrients as efficiently as you could if you were in rest and digest mode, that parasympathetic system. So really take the time to do this. This is a part of your training. And that's the hardest thing, I think, for myself and for everyone to kind of get in their mind is warm up, the stretch. The workout itself is always everyone's favorite part. We're going to crush it for that. But while you're still on the mats, while you're still dedicated to it, you still have to pay attention to this. Like, I'm still breathing here. I'm on my phone. I'm looking at the time, but I'm still working on my breathing. I'm cooling my body down. And if it's late at night, may not even want to be on your phone. That may kind of help keep you up and may be bad for you. Maybe a distraction and prevent you from getting to sleep. But since this is the beginning of the day, I didn't mind being on my phone. But again, the cool down is still part of your training. The recovery is part of your training. The rest days is part of your training. You need to prioritize that to be successful and to get the most out of it. So that's my 2 cents, y'all. I hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, again, check out the links below. Comment, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And if you have any questions, I'm here for you guys. Peace, y'all.